Dustin.
Yeah.
Bryson.
Me.
Biggie Smalls.
Boom.
Danny Lieberger.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine.
All three of us.
Salt and pepper and heavy D up in the limousine. Sorry.
All of us are in the DZ right now. We're in the deconstruction zone. I told you I was going to say this before camera, and I was like, I'm going to wait till we're live to tell you.
I need to hear it.
I think I'm going to say 50. I said to someone 60% chance today. I've dropped it down to 50 because I feel a little better. But a 50% chance I think I retore something in my knee this week.
Doing what?
That's what I don't know. It feels all the same signs and symptoms of when I tore my ACL. And I played basketball, but did nothing explosive. Did nothing that...
I've seen you play basketball. I can confirm that there was nothing explosive.
Nothing explosive. And I didn't leave it I think I hurt myself.
Yeah.
And then hours later, I was like,
that could just be swelling.
It could be.
That could be swelling. Do you wear a brace ever?
I did today for the first half of the day because it was the only... I can't sit up and sit down without losing stability. It's wild.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Hey.
You're a young man.
I'm a young man.
You shouldn't be having these problems.
Despite this, my gray that's just taken over.
Hey, why don't you get that stuff that I see on the commercials?
Just for me?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but you just brush it in and magically you've got brown hairs again.
I want to be all gray. I look like a skunk right now is what I don't like. I'd rather just be all gray.
Nobody knows that. This is all a journey, man. You just don't think about it too much. You're a good looking guy.
I like you. Well, hey, so if no one figured it out yet, if they're listening to audio, then maybe they're waiting and holding out for Emily's voice to come through. She's not here today. It's just you and me.
She's not here. And if you don't know who I am, hello, I'm Dustin. I'm the producer. And really, I'm the B team. When they're like, hey, bring in the lefty, and then the lefty, not that guy. That guy, so even worse than that guy. That's when they bring me in.
The second lefty?
Yeah. The second lefty. So.
But I had kind of an interesting topic for us today because, the main point of the podcast in some ways is going through Emily's journey. She's not here, so we're not going to manufacture that without her.
It'd be fun though.
It could be
It'd be fun to do her journey for her. What's the next stages of the journey?
That could be a fun. We could do a whole season without her, but you pretend to be her for a whole season.
What if we did a thing where we just crystal balled it? We got an eight ball, and we just Will, Emily, and then the end of that is but she doesn't get to listen, so we just kind of get to play it out in real time. It's stupid. I'm talking.
I think it's an interesting idea. But my thought for today was on my way here was Googling some different Christian sayings. Someone said something.
Well, you're Googling in your car while you're driving.
It wasn't the most safe thing I've ever done. At stoplights.
That's what my wife always says. Recently, she said she sent me a photo, and then I was like, stop texting and driving. And she goes, no, I was at a stoplight. How do you know I'm texting and driving? I said, could you send me a photo from the driver's seat of the car? I'm not that smart, but
press the live photo and see if the car is moving while the picture
is
there.
Yeah,
if it's a live photo. But what we're going to do today is I have some sayings I want to go through, Christianese sayings.
Okay.
Some that I just want to hear your thoughts on. I don't know how much we'll talk about them, but one of the things that I think if people aren't a part of the church, sometimes they hear things that people say. An example. Maybe we'll start with this one, but an example is love the sinner, hate the sin. That's kind of a popular Christian saying.
Yeah.
It's not actually in the Bible, right? And some of these, or all of these, aren't really in the Bible. Though you could make an argument that you could pull pieces to make the case for a saying like that. But when I think about people that are deconstructing, oftentimes, it can sometimes be pointed back to some sayings like these, things that they just assume to be true. And they're well, I'm not going to subscribe to a Jesus that would say this or a Bible that teaches that. And for most of these, they're not at least explicitly in there. And so I thought, let's talk about them. Really, we can take any direction, but maybe from you and me as followers of Jesus, what do we initially think about these? Where are they good? Where are they bad? Where are they problematic? And just chat around them a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but let's start with love the sinner, hate the sin, right? That's maybe the most popularly known one.
Mm-hmm.
And usually is used in terms of at least in my perspective, used in terms of LGBTQ plus people. It's towards primarily gay people in the church. Well, we love you, but your homosexual lifestyle is a sin, or you're a transgendered person, that's a sin. So we love you. We just have to hate this whole sin thing. And when you hear that, in any context of sin, but maybe you could narrow it down to one in particular if you want to. But when you hear that, like, what initially pops into your mind?
I mean, initially what pops into my mind is that it's unidirectional. So when you say that to someone, you're not talking to yourself. You're not looking in a mirror.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's interesting.
You're going to give yourself probably, maybe not everybody. Maybe some people are like, what's that called when you whip yourself? Like self-flagellation. Yeah. Maybe some people are doing that. And also that's not good. Don't do that either. Right. That's not in the Bible either. But there, we are human beings, and it's way easier to point at other people than to point at ourselves. So first thing I think of when I hear love the sinner, hate the sin is, how often do you apply that to your own life? Mm-hmm. And maybe some people do. Maybe some people just really like are struggling with their own sin, which is just a Christian word for like wrongdoing, things that they know are wrong. And even if you're not even a Christian, like, you can have your own moral compass and go against your own moral compass. Yeah. You can make decisions based on things that you want to do, maybe drugs or sex or whatever it is that you say, nope, I consider this to be immoral or wrong. Yeah. And you still do it anyway. So how often are we doing that? How often are we looking at our own self in the mirror when we're saying it? And the other thing is, I don't know how you can, if especially when you look at it from the LGBTQ lens, if you're looking at a person, a human being, and you say, I love you, but I hate who you are, right. That's problematic. Yeah, which is like not in it, like, that's definitely a way that could be rephrased, right? Mm-hmm. That's not an unfair recharacterization. I don't think so, because who they are, whether or not you believe that's who they actually are, or take all of that nuance away, who that person perceives themselves to be and who they are presenting as is that. It's who they believe that they are. It's who they are, right? And to say that you hate their sin and their sin is who they are is you hate them. Yeah. That's it. There's no differentiating. We say love the sinner. That's the frosting. That's what makes us feel good. Yeah. Hate the sin. Really, it's just, and I don't think that, I mean, I don't know. Maybe Christians who say that a lot actually hate the people, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know I think that they just get inundated with certain information and certain like dogma and theology, and then they go, this is what I have to say. They maybe don't even know a single person who's gay or trans or anything, and then they're going to, or like someone that's an alcoholic, right? Or anything that like whatever they're using to be the sin in this situation, right? So from maybe an interesting question to ask, like, if you were going to rephrase it and you want to be charitable, like, what would you, if you were going to try to take the best of that phrase and strip away the worst of it? Hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah. Even like start from love the sinner. Yeah. It starts off with you're a sinner. Mm-hmm. Like it's accusatory. Yeah, and not self-reflective, as you said at all. Like you're loving the sinner, right? Singular, right? Not as if you're not a sinner. Yeah. So how would you rephrase it then to make it more charitable and maybe more Christ-like? Love people. Yeah, that's it. I dig it. Love people. That's it. Yeah. I like that. There's other stuff in there, man, and there's going to be nuances and there's going to be battles and you're going to fight with things. And if you're not wrestling in your own soul with stuff, you don't have to say everything out loud. Trust me, I don't. Yeah, I do. I'm a podcaster. Well, I know, because I know you off camera too, and you don't say everything on mic. Maybe you say everything out loud, but like sometimes we need to just wrestle with stuff. Yeah. I dig that. And I think there's actually a lot of wisdom in that, like and that's why I was kind of tongue in cheek saying like me, like we're on this podcast, right? But there is like a ton of wisdom being like, not everything has to be verbally processed or shared, or like not everything that we think needs to be put out into the world. But I'm a verbal processor, like I'm an out loud oral processor, so it does help me, but I do spend a great deal of time thinking, because not everything comes out of my mouth. And a lot of times when it does come out of my mouth, I get in trouble for it. Yeah. So another interesting one that I'm thinking, like, so I just got a call yesterday. Someone in our congregation's mother passed away. And so talking with them and letting them know, like, I'm praying for you. Like, is there anything I can do? Chatting about funeral logistics. Like, can I be there? Can I help? Like, what's all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't say this, but I've had people say this to me before in terms of losses of life in my family, or like I remember when I went through my divorce, or my ACL was torn, like big traumatic things in my life, like that were life changing. Something I've heard said both to me, and I've heard said to other people, and I don't try to say this enough, but I probably have. Everything happens for a reason. When you hear that phrase, which is not necessarily in the Bible, it does come out of like a theological lens of like predestination, like God is orchestrating things, like so there could be a precedent for believing that, but like everything happens for a reason isn't inherently in the Bible. And so, but when you hear that, like both, what do you think about it? But a more interesting question maybe that I would want to know is like, say you're in that for like that position of something has happened, like say something really harsh happened to me, like what would be maybe the comforting thing you would say to someone else? So it's kind of two-part question, like what do you think about it? And then maybe you're the friend or the pastor or the just the voice of grace. What would you say that you think would be uplifting, or maybe what would you want to hear if you were in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, everything happens for a reason. That's not where I thought you were going, by the way. I thought you were going somewhere else. But
yeah,
everything happens for a reason. I do kind of like say it and think it.
You do? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But now that we're sitting here talking about it and there's these bright lights on me and a microphone, I'm thinking like, does everything happen for a reason? And because there has to be a reasoner. Is that a word?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think it's a word. But
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like if there has to be a maker of the reason, or a higher power that would, and I don't think that God is up there, G.I. Joe, Barbie, like moving us around.
Chess piecing us around, right?
No, I think that we have lots of autonomy and free will, and so everything happens for a reason. I don't know if I buy that now that we're sitting here.
Well, the conversation so this is actually what made me think about this topic as a whole, was this kind of question. I got lunch with someone yesterday, and they said a phrase like, God doesn't bring you to it, but God brings you through it. Another like non-biblical phrase, but something I was like, I actually kind of agree with that, because that's like, not everything happens for a reason, which could be like God orchestrates everything, but God can make goodness out of things, like is a much more maybe charitable way to look at it.
Sure.
Because I go back and forth, because in all of these things I'm not necessarily saying aren't true, or I'm not making a value statement on them, but like I think kind of both sides of that. Like if I was in a situation, it would equal parts be really comforting for someone maybe to say everything happens for a reason, because it gives me a lens to look where God is.
But what if
moving.
The reason's bad?
Right. So that's the other side of it, is like I could feel really uplifted to be like, well, good, God is in this. Yeah. But then like, what if 5-10 years down the road, 1 week, whatever, it's like nothing, that God didn't work that for good,
right?
So I can definitely see, and it's one of the reasons I kind of avoid saying it, because I know that it, at its best, can be really comforting to people, but at its worst, it can kind of cause you to spiral.
Right. Yeah. The thing you said about God doesn't bring you to it, but he brings you to it. I mean, that I do agree with. I just cringe when I hear like those phrases. Pastor rhymey phrases that you're just like, and I know that they help people remember, and I think those are great. I think a lot of times we minimize our faith to like bullet points that the pastor says that rhyme, or they all start with the letter A or whatever.
I went to a service in Chicago. It's a church it's called Soul City Church, and it's a fun church. It's in several places in Chicago now, and their worship director was preaching, and he was talking about worship in general, like and he said their lead pastor does this, their pastors do this, lead pastors like kind of make these idioms and these phrases, and so he did one, and he was kind of making like, I'm trying to be like Pastor Jared here, and he's like, well, when you make to have effective worship, you have to make your worship a warship. And I laugh about that still, and I have a Spotify worship playlist called Make My Worship a Worship, because it's like, I don't find it theologically helpful at all, but I find it really funny, like the phraseology of it. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it does minimize it. It's like, oh, great, it's catchy, I've not forgot it. Yeah. But it doesn't always have a lot of depth to it.
Right. I mean, I guess if it makes you, go deeper and think things through, I guess it works. It just... I mean, we've been doing that in our faith for so long, like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup T-shirts that say like, Jesus instead of Reese's, and like we take cool stuff that is in culture, and then we go
and make it
cool. Look at this. I'm gonna make this shirt lame. And I wouldn't wear a t-shirt that says Reese's on it either.
Right. That's the funny thing. It's like you wouldn't wear that shirt for the brand.
Yeah.
And I love Reese's. Favorite candy of all time.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
What's your favorite candy?
It's up there. I mean, it's up there. Crunch bars are up there when they're fresh.
Yeah.
If you get like a Crunch bar at a Dollar General or whatever, like those are so old. They've been in a warehouse. They're white. You open it up, it's like weird chocolate.
It is the sign, like the whiteness of them. Like you can tell they're like oxidized or whatever. It's like they're not good.
But if you get a gas station, and you're gonna pay more for it because they're like $1.80 or $2 or whatever. But you get a Crunch bar from there, they're gonna be fresh.
Remember Bunch of Crunch?
Yeah, I just had some the other day. Actually.
Do they still make them?
They do. They're at the dollar store.
That was one of my favorites. First date candy I ever had.
It was all right. But anyway, back to the thing. It's like, okay, I'm with you on the God does in the Bible. It does say that God works everything for the good of those who love Him. So that is in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And that does sound with a lot more words like everything happens for a reason. But if you say that to someone who's not a believer, is that how it works?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I don't know how helpful little cliches are. So you asked me at the beginning, what would I say to someone who is hurting? And, honestly, like, I'm a big fan of just being like, man, I'm so sorry. Like, and I have to think about it for a second because I can easily just go, I'm so sorry, like, and just say it with no feeling or no meaning because I don't really even mean it. I actually need to take a second and think and go like, oh, if that happened and that, like if this happened to your knee the second time, man, that really is tough. And I know it was tough on you last time. I love Danny. He's my friend. Like I honestly like have to go through all this in my head. I'm not just like, I'm not just like insta empathetic. That's not my jam.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And so I go, but I do care about you. So if you had to go through a hardship of any kind, that bums me out. So then I can say, hey man, I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? And when I say that to people, I mean it. When I tell people I'm going to pray for them, I mean it. I maybe only do it once or twice because I forget, but I will. Like I'll pray right away. And then usually the next time I see him, and it also helps me to remember to ask him how stuff's going.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually made a point of that. Like when I used to be really bad at it, I'll pray for you, and then I wouldn't do it, which is not, it doesn't exactly fit in this, like things in the Bible, but I do wonder when people say they'll pray for you if they actually mean it. And because I'm guilty, so it's more like self-reflective, and I've made a point now, if I say it to someone over text or in person, like either pray with the person in the moment, because like why not, right? I don't think we do that enough. But also like, if I can, I'll just like stop and be like, I should probably pray for you because I said I was going to do this. And
full truth. Yeah. I do that. But sometimes I'll do it just because I'll say like, oh, I'll pray for you. And then I'll be like, oh, I can't lie about this. I got to pray for him right now because I'm going to forget.
Yeah.
So I do it right then.
So maybe what you thought I was going to say.
Yeah.
So I had to say like, if it's not this one, I do want to hear it after this one.
Okay.
Which is God won't give you more than you can handle.
That's where I thought you were going. Yeah.
What do you think about that one?
Well, what does it mean to say that he won't give you more than you, what can you handle?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what does that mean? So does that mean that you're going to go through a bunch of pain? You're going to go through tears. You're going to go through trauma. You're going to go through heartache, but you're going to go through, right?
Yeah.
Or does that mean like, you take your own life? Like, what does that more than you can handle mean?
Yeah, right.
Because to me, what's the end result of that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so that it's a nice saying that makes people feel warm, I guess.
Uh-huh.
It makes people feel like they could trust God. Like they go, okay, well, he's not going to give me more than I can handle. So, but the truth of the matter is that biblically, we can handle anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the Holy Spirit lives inside us, the helper, whatever. God lives inside of us is what we believe. And so what can't we handle?
Yeah.
And I've been in some pretty dark places. So I'm not some like, pasty white Christian boy who's always been a Christian who, I've been in some pretty dark spots, and I've been in dark spots before I was a believer and after. And so, I think God is with people even before they're believers in him, and again, like followers of him, I should say. But if you're a person who is struggling with something, those are nice words to hear. Like to know that God's got your back. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's just not accurate. I mean, God's going to allow you. I mean, look, if you take Job, either way, if it was just an analogy or Job was a real person and all those things happened.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know, like Job, I mean, his life, the
I
story
mean,
of Job,
literally just full torn up from the ground up.
Yeah. Old Testament story, book of the Bible, pretty much everything of loved ones dying,
his kids died, his wife died,
sickness, disease, outcast, all the things happen. And in the story, it's like the devil is subjecting him to these things as a test.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty
funny at the end too, though.
Yeah.
How he comes off like, I got new kids, I got a new wife.
It's a weird story.
Oh. Was she better looking? You know what I mean? I don't know.
I find Job, someone's early on to me said as a pastor, you shouldn't preach on Job until you've really seen some shit. That's not, obviously, that's probably not what they really said. They were until you've experienced some pain or whatever.
Yeah.
And I actually, the more I think, early, I was 22. I was I can preach on whatever the hell I want. And I'm doing Job next week.
Yeah. How about you? Now I'm going to do Job every week for a year.
And I'm kind of you know what? There's wisdom in that, because outside of going through hardship, and even relating to this story of figuring out what you can handle and where is God in all of that. I think up to the point when someone said to me, I had very few hardships in my life. And so I didn't even have the framework to entertain the idea of Job's life.
Sure. Yeah.
And where God would be in or not be in the midst of it.
You just be using your imagination to the best of your ability. Yeah. And that's not the same thing.
Yeah. So I'm with you though, because I feel right now, I'm in a pretty, we were talking a little bit before, I'm just a little stressed right now, a little overwhelmed. I feel a lot. And I think I believe it's God wouldn't give me more than but I still don't even think, because I've given myself a lot. God, it's not God just hey, here's another stress for you to hold,
right.
Or here's another work assignment, or here's another I feel I've actually done all that. And so equal parts, maybe it is true. I've given myself more than I can handle at times.
Yeah.
But I think what you said that's not overtly said in that text, in that line, but I think implied is regardless of what you are carrying, God is walking with you and supporting you, which I think is maybe more helpful for me to hear. Because then it's not about load management and what God is or isn't giving me. Mm-hmm. It's about my remembrance and really deep held belief that in the midst of all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the stressed, the whatever, God is walking with me. I find that more uplifting than God won't give me more than I can handle, especially when I am giving myself most of the things that I can't handle, Yeah.
Danny, there was a girl walking on a beach and there were starfish all over the beach. Do you know this one? Stop me if
There's
you know.
There's only one set of footprints, because that's where he carried her.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that again, you said the saying is God won't give you more than you can handle. Is God giving us anything, or is he meaning or is he taking the stress? I don't know. Is he testing us all the time? Is that when bad things happen, is that a test from God?
Yeah.
Or is that just we live on the planet that's broken?
Yeah.
And
yeah, I would tend to, that's also, and we don't have, this is its whole topic on its own, but when I get into, I took a moral or an ethics class in seminary, and we talked about evil and do these, Westboro Baptist, right? They think people are dying and soldiers are dying and tornadoes are happening because of America's sin, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty bad theology.
I think it's a bad reading of scripture for sure.
Yeah. Yep. And there is this idea, it's I think in general it's really bad theology to be these things are happening because God is making them happen. Mm-hmm. But I know, again, we said we wouldn't talk about Emily, but I know one of her big beefs is well, then the other side of that is God is just allowing shit to happen.
Right.
And so I think there's some level of nuance in there of God's place and activity and all of things, and not allowing freedom and allowing choice, but also, again, not bringing us to things, but through things. And it's a really, the more I think, we could probably do a 2-hour episode just on that topic.
Yeah. And I think her, and I love her, so I'm not throwing shade, she'll listen to this, but I think that there's her argument falls short in a lot of ways, because this is such a short time that we're here on this planet. Mm-hmm. So to say okay, you're a dad and you love your kids, and you would, you wouldn't like let them run into a fiery building, but God allows those things. He allows us to run into proverbial, fiery buildings in our lives. Sure. Right. And why would he do that? Well, my thing is that if I was omniscient and omnipotent and I knew everything, and I knew that Micah running into a burning building would change his life in X number of ways and bring him closer to me as his dad or whatever, would be my goal. It's this thing kind of breaks down, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'd go like, okay, but if he's going to run in there and die, but I knew that in 8 years he was going to be a heroin addict, and maybe that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, God knows what we don't understand. The bigger picture
changes perspective.
Yeah. It's a whole thing we don't get. And so like, why does he allow these things to happen? He sees things on a plane we can't even fathom. So, yeah. And I have to trust that that's good.
Which I think is where I fall on a lot of it, right? It's like and I've said this in arrangements through the course of this podcast, is like, but I truly believe in like the sovereignty of God and like my inability to understand the full perspective of God. Right. And I kind of just like embrace the mystery of that.
Yeah. Well, it's like my kids. Like, my kids are 15 and 12, and the amount of times that they look at me and roll their eyes because I'm not going to do something that they want me to do, or I'm not going to let them eat something right before dinner, or whatever it is, But you're 15, like, you don't know. Like, there's in a lot of ways, like, my son is become very mature in the last couple of years, but then there's a lot of ways that like he's learning how to drive now.
Yeah.
And he's so good at all, everything else, like his hand-eye coordination is fantastic. He's a soccer player, all these things. And you go, yeah, he's like, I look at him kind of in a lot of ways like a man, not like a boy anymore. But then we get in the car and he has no idea what's going on, you know? And okay, you're a little boy still in this scenario. And that's how we are. Like, God knows and sees things so much different than we do. They want to know why they can't get these new shoes or whatever. They don't understand what the budget is. Yeah. They don't understand what finances are and how much money we make as a family and the bills. There's so much. And that's how we are. It doesn't matter if you're 90 years old. There's still so much we don't know that God knows. And so.
Right. And the interesting thing about that analogy you're using is like, especially for parents, like when they become parents, sometimes like, well, now like we've arrived, right? And we now view ourselves in like that God-like role, but the difference, like, we're just in a different level of like childlike maturation. Like, we're still maturing. Like, we don't just become like, in the same way you're like, my kid is still a child, and like there are things, and there's times of maturity and time, like that's still how God, I think, looks at us, right? I agree. And it's like, we haven't just evolved to that. And I think that's an interesting perspective to think through, as we get older, as we evolve, as we become like maybe a pastor, a church member, a parent, a leader, like whatever. Like, it's not like we've somehow like crossed the threshold to the other side. We're still that kid that God is like, you still can't see the full picture, but you're getting better at it.
Yeah. And we won't, not this side of heaven, at least. Right. My mom is here from Seattle, and my daughter and her were just talking right before you got here. And my mom had shipped a bunch of stuff, like toys, and like, not toys, but like fun stuff to do, whatever, and like crafts and stuff. And so she's showing my daughter this stuff, and she's going like, well, we could use this for this. And my mom's really imaginative and like crafty and stuff, and my daughter's looking at her like, what? She's 12. She's like, Grandma, that is a canvas, Grandma, not a piece of paper. And then my mom's like, yeah, I know. But like, it's just the confidence that my daughter has to say like, well, this old lady doesn't know anything, but she's the idiot in the conversation, right? Yeah. My daughter is not my mom. My mom's like, I've used this 1,000 times. So it's just funny, and that's how we are.
That's a good one.
We think we figure everything out, and then we're like, okay, we made it, but we're not. We're still kids.
And we kind of all are 12-year-old Christians, even when we get older, because we have this hubris to be like, well, I figured it all out, right? Or like, I figured something out. Yeah, but I hear us say things like that. You said you're like, how could you be like, you're so stupid? Like, this can't be that, right? Like, we say that to God all the time, right?
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. LGBTQ people can't love Jesus or be, it's like, what?
Yeah. And people do that with a million different things.
A million different things.
So here's my last one for us, and we'll wrap it up with this one, because I think it's the most problematic. But I think maybe you love it.
I probably do.
God helps those who help themselves.
I'm a bootstrap guy, but I that's clearly not in the Bible.
Yeah.
That's the antithesis of what Jesus was about.
Yeah.
I mean, he helped all of us who could not help ourselves.
Yeah.
While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And I think a core tenet of the gospel is that we are helped by God because we cannot wholly help ourselves. Like,
right.
So the idea, to your point, you said, I actually have nothing else to add. You said, I think what is perfect. It's antithetical to the gospel because it puts us as the ones doing all the help, the work, the job. Like, I think Christ is the one doing the work and the job.
Yeah. I mean, some people are not capable of helping themselves, you know, whether or not maybe it's a mental illness or whatever it is, right? Like some people just, I have family members who cannot help themselves, you know, and it's a backwards way to think about, and I don't know who said it first.
And a merit-based way to help you.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
It's whoever have achieved the most work or have done
right.
then get the most help from Jesus back or from God, you know.
But then we read the parable of the talents, and then we go, wait, maybe God does help. You know what I mean? Like, is it that parable does feel that way in some ways?
Did you listen to my sermon?
No.
Yeah, that's what I just preached on.
Did you? Well, I mean, I edited your sermon.
Yeah. The talent. Mine was the master and the servants. Like he gives 5 to this one.
Right.
2 to,
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that not the talent?
Yeah, I think it probably. I get the names of them all mixed up. But
yeah,
I did talk about that one. But my whole point in the message was that it's not actually an ROI message. That he's not, or the master in this story seems to be less concerned about return on investment and more just like courageously risk taking.
I see.
And not like,
or just showing up and doing something.
Yeah, or just like yeah. But I think that I could see now, even in the language we're saying, like you take that snippet, you could easily misconstrue that into God helps those who help themselves. Right. And we talk, and a part of what we're doing today is like how do you get there? And I think maybe that's how you get there, right? Is you take a thing like that and you're like, well, Jesus said it.
That's right. And that was my point, was that like, where did that come from? Oh, maybe that's where that came from. Yeah. Because you read that and you go,
Yeah. In which I said this on Sunday when the message is like, I think almost certainly in the majority of Jesus' parables, the most overt takeaway is not the most value. Like the subversive one is what Jesus is always pushing towards. And so you look at this, it's like, it seems like a return on investment.
But why would he do that? He knows we're all idiots.
He does know we're idiots, right?
I mean, his apostles every time were like, so Lord.
Yeah. Well, doesn't he say somewhere in one of them is like, I'm going to teach these things and you guys just aren't going to understand them. Like you're going to mess it up. So
just be blunt, man.
Be blunt. Yeah. Well, I hope this was, a couple things. I hope this was helpful for like anyone listening or watching, like in some ways just to even verbal process, but I hope it was fun for you. Like these kind of things I find interesting just to dive into. And so,
and you know, hopefully the viewers, we know Emily's the star of this show, let's be honest, but like, you know, when she's not here, if we can do something a little bit different and it adds a little bit to their life, that'd be cool. So I'm into that.
Yeah.
Are we going to do though? Recommendation station?
I do got one?
I do.
Yeah, well then of course. Let's take it down to a little place I like to call Recommendation Station.
Toot toot. All right, so there's a show, I think A24 produced it, called Beef.
Oh yeah, it's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, have you seen
or
it?
Hulu? Netflix?
It's on Netflix, I think. Yeah,
I have not, but it's like highly reviewed.
Yeah, it is so good.
I didn't know it was A24. They were making so much. It's because of the writer's strike, though, I guess, right?
Oh,
they're not striking.
Oh, is that true?
I think they're part of some independent. That's why they keep pushing stuff out.
Well, I don't know, but here's what I know. I saw the cover of it, and I was like, it was so weird. Yeah, like the cover photo on the screen.
Yeah, it's like the guy is the middle finger. He is a finger of a hand or whatever.
I didn't see that one.
Oh, okay.
No, the one I saw, they're just like, he's like screaming. His face is the whole thing and he's screaming.
Oh, okay.
And then I saw another one where she was doing it. And I was like, I don't know, this is weird. I like weird stuff. So I hit play and I mean, I was hooked, dude. It's so good. The writing is so good.
Is it a comedy?
It is funny. There's definitely some really funny parts in it, but it's not I wouldn't say it's a comedy. It's probably a dramedy, I guess.
Okay.
But so it's basically about this character. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but it's about this character. And at the very beginning, there's a road rage incident. Mm-hmm. And then the way that their lives intertwine because they're going after revenge. Okay. They're all about revenge against the other person. And then the way that, you know, that all goes down. I'm rarely entertained anymore with television. Like I'm pretty.
And this is a series or
it's a series. Okay. Yeah. It's 8 episodes or something. Okay. Yeah. And, but I'm rarely like pumped about TV shows nowadays, or it's like, I mean, I'm more into reality TV again because it's at least sort of organic.
Sure.
And so, that's it. Beef, watch it. If you're a kid, don't watch it because there's some stuff, but
you did all 8 and you loved it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
I was sad. This is how I know if something's really good. If I'm sad at the end, like I wish there were more episodes, because generally speaking, almost everything I watch, I'm just like, first season was great, and then everything else sucked.
Yeah. That's how I felt. Did you watch Severance season 1?
I watched Severance season 1.
Did you like it? I felt when that ended, I was like, there was a hole in my life that I was like, I need this tomorrow.
And I did not want to watch it. I was just in a show hole.
Yeah.
And so I was like, let me
That's
see.
How I fell into it,
let me see. Like, I like that guy from Parks and Rec. So I was like, I'll check it out. And I watched. In the first episode, I was kind of like, okay. Yeah. I like the cinematography. The character development seemed to be pretty good. The premise I wasn't that into. I thought it was kind of stupid.
That's what I thought. I was like, this is going to be a work-life balance thing. And it's so freaky and good.
Yeah, it's so good.
My recommendation, I also just finished a Netflix show that I don't know that will be widely popular now, but it's the quarterback or whatever. It follows 3 NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I like never watched the NFL. Like I just ended the last episode is an episode about the Super Bowl, and I was like, I didn't even watch Super Bowl. So it's like it was like I was watching the game. I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. But it was really good. Like, I'm always interested in seeing celebrities in real life. And so I liked it. If you like sports, you'd like it. But it's also a great reminder that these people do not live lives like us. Yeah. I was like watching these people.
Right.
And there's 3 quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. And Marcus Mariota, Oregon Duck alum, Heisman Trophy winner, was there. He was the most interesting to follow, and his life was perhaps the most like other people's, still bringing in as a backup this year millions, right? So it's like not like, and then Mahomes is like during a part of his subplot, like he's building a home in Kansas City, like he's just signed his contract, which is a $500 million contract. At the time it was signed, the biggest in history,
right?
And I'm like seeing this house and I'm like, well, like that's just not my life.
Cars come and pick him up, and,
like he rolled up in like what is $100 and something thousand Bronco to a game, and I was like, that's not my life, right? And like a jacket that's $20,000, right? So so at that side it was like interesting to be like, and as the Mega Millions jackpot's getting closer to $1 billion right now, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting.
You can't do that, you're Methodist.
I could live life. Can't
Methodist. Yeah, you're not allowed.
Oh, I bought a ticket the other day.
Oh no,
I lost.
I hope the bishop's not watching.
Oh, he watches. Bishop, he's a big fan. I don't know
who you calling a bish.
But it's a great show. So quarterbacks, it's 1 season. There's actually, it's not drama, but like a bunch of quarterbacks have declined to be in season 2. Because the people they asked are kind of, maybe they would be the most interesting to follow, but they're like, I kind of got to get my shit together for this season of my life. Otherwise I might not have a job. Okay. And so it's like, I want to win the Super Bowl, or I want to be an MVP or whatever. And so a lot of the really compelling people said no this year, which is interesting.
Well, they're pushing it hard on my feed. Like when I pop on, it's always that. And I like Mahomes, so I've thought about checking it out. I'm not a big NFL guy either.
Yeah,
but
if you like Mahomes the most, which for me was other than Mariota was the most compelling, Kirk Cousins was actually really interesting, like a very Christian dude.
Oh, really?
And so that was really interesting. But it's very Mahomes centric, and it kind of becomes focally on him as they win the Super Bowl, right?
Gotcha.
So it like zeroes in on him. And as a
So
Missouri,
they had been filming that. They were filming that.
Yeah, I mean, they lucked out because Mariota plays half the season and gets benched, and so that's a really interesting storyline. Kirk Cousins, best record in football, or one of the best, MVP candidate, lose in the first round, very interesting, or the wild card. And then Mahomes, like up and down season injuries, but really good MVP. He wins MVP.
Plays hurt all the time.
Yeah. So it was a cool, like, I was just thinking actually as I was watching it, like, I don't know that they'll find 3 better and more interesting people.
Yeah.
And I love those shows. They did a high school version of it. I used to like, it's called QB1. I thought it was great. And so I was like, oh, this is just the pro version of it.
Do you watch F1, that F1 show?
Which one's that one?
The Need for Speed or something.
Oh, no. Is it good?
It's so good. I've never been into car racing of any kind.
Okay.
And now I follow F1 because you know who the managers are, the principal owners, the driver, and they start to go through and they do all the interviews, and so you get to know them. It's great.
Yeah. I was going to recommend another one, but I'll save it for our next one. So,
all right.
I actually kind of forgot we were podcasting for a second because we were just like
just riffing.
Yeah, I kind of forgot. So, with that, we'll keep riffing off camera, but we'll wrap this up, friends. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget,
embrace the journey.